5 years ago, if you were considering buying a used inkjet printer from a thrift store, I would have said you're crazy, because everybody needs a printer, so the only reason someone would get rid of one is because if it's broken or worn out, it's probably totally out of ink, especially if these multifunction models, there's more parts to go wrong. So just getting a new printer. They're a cheap commodity item. It makes much more sense to buy a new one. But maybe not anymore. Because in case you haven't noticed, there hasn't exactly been a lot of innovation in the field of printers recently. New ones today do basically all the same things that ones did 10 years ago. So the only thing they really can do is make new printers cheaper and flimsier and more likely to break, while simultaneously forcing you to use outrageously expensive OEM ink cartridges. Some brands are even switching to a monthly subscription, forcing you to pay for ink even when you're not using it. And with many people simply not needing a printer at all anymore, the situation isn't likely to get better. Except maybe if increasing cybersecurity threats and the massive carbon footprint of AI get people to realize that maybe ink and paper wasn't so bad after all. So if you do need a printer, maybe it's not so crazy after all to consider a used one, such as this Brother multifunction printer I got for 20 bucks at the thrift store. It's an MFC J885DW, and according to the date on the screen, is probably from 2016. It has an SD card slot, a memory stick slot, supports Wi-Fi, and as you saw by how I got it all over my fingers, it has ink in it. It didn't come with any paper in it, neither did the 3 other printers at the thrift store at the time have any paper in them either. Nonetheless, I went through the motions of telling it to make a copy, and it seemed to work fine up to the point where it detected that it didn't have any paper. So it seems like it's working if I would put paper in it. So let's see if that's true. And I realized the reason why the ink leaked and got all over my fingers is because I made the mistake of carrying this printer vertically, causing the ink to leak out. So don't do that. Once the ink is in the printer, only carry it horizontally to keep it from spilling. I loaded it with some plain paper and I pulled out the output tray. I think there's supposed to be one more piece to this that folds out, but it's missing, but that's no big deal. I'll start out with something simple, just making a copy of a black and white document that's mostly text. So I'll put that on the glass. The arrow is in the back corner here. Seems like every printer has it in a different orientation. And I'll do copy, black start. And see how it turns out. I have not done a cleaning cycle on this ink. Sounds like it's working. But we get a blank page. So I may need to do a cleaning cycle if it'll work at all. Okay, settings, maintenance, printhead cleaning, black only for now, strongest because we saw nothing on that printout. Yeah, it'll consume more ink, but the ink is cheap. Okay, that took a long time. Check the printhead nozzles, yes. Load paper. Well, we're getting something. Still has lines on it, but at least it's something. Actually looks like the color ink is fine, just the black and white that's having a lot of problems with the nozzles. So I'll tell it the magenta's fine, the cyan fine, yellow is fine, but the black, It's somewhere between 2 and 3, so I'll tell it 2. Well, that's still not perfect, but it's good enough that it may not actually be visible in actual use, so I'll just try using it, see how it comes out. How about a magazine this time? Okay, copy, color start. Yeah, we definitely have some lines going on. It wasn't like that on the original magazine. So, still needs improvement. Well, even after multiple cleaning cycles, the black ink is still having some problems, and wow, that has used a lot of the ink, because when I first got this and looked at the ink volume, the black was totally full and the colors were all halfway, and now look at it. So we used a quarter of the entire black ink just trying to clean the nozzles. So it's obvious this thing has a partially clogged print head, and no amount of the printer's built-in self-cleaning is going to unclog it. It's just going to end up wasting more ink. But unfortunately on this model, there's no way to gain access to the print head. There's no command to get it to come out to where you can gain access to it. So what they tell you to do is just tell it to start printing something, and while it's printing, unplug it. So I'll tell it to start copying a piece of paper here, and while it's copying, I'll unplug it. Black start. Okay, let's see if that worked. Yep, there's the print head. Now I just gotta pull out that piece of paper that it started to print on. A lot of the methods of trying to unclog the print head on this type of printer involve taking out the ink cartridges, hooking up some rubber tubing, and using a syringe to force hot water through the whole system. But I'm going to try the simpler approach of folding up a strip of paper towel and putting some isopropyl alcohol on it and putting it down here and trying to run that print head back and forth across it like that. You can see a whole bunch of ink coming off. So let's see how well that's going to work. Okay, I gave it about a minute to dry. Close the lid, plug it back in, and see what we get. Okay, I'll try the print head cleaning on this thing here. All normal. Start. Okay, cleaning completed. Check the print head nozzles. Yes. Start. Let's see. Hey, that looks pretty good. I don't see any missing lines there. So that might just have fixed it. So let's try our magazine cover again and see how it comes out this time. Copy. What? Inklo. What? X. I just want to copy. I don't care about the ink level. Color start. Yeah, I did order a set of cheap ink cartridges on Amazon. Not bad. I don't see any lines. I think we have a winner. And yeah, you can get this complete set of 4 aftermarket ink cartridges for this printer for about $16 on Amazon. Combine that with the $20 I paid for the printer itself. It still costs less than buying a name brand HP ink cartridge. Now when you want to connect this to a computer, that's when you encounter what I consider to be a design flaw with these brother machines. Because you look on the back, there's no ports on the back. You just get the single feed cheater and a trapdoor for clearing out a paper jam. And by the way, it was made in Philippines. So you look on this side, you get the permanently attached power cord and the telephone jacks for the built-in fax machine. Yes, it does have a fax machine built in. So you look on this side, and instead of ports for connecting it to a computer, you just see this sticker. And it's telling you that instead of where you would expect the USB and Ethernet ports to be on the outside of the cabinet, it's actually hidden under the trapdoor. Now I think if you ever see a sticker telling you something's not where you expect it to be, that's a mistake. It should be where you expect it to be. They shouldn't need to put a sticker on it. But you open it up, and hidden in there is the USB port and the Ethernet port, which has this knockout plug stuck in it for some reason. So you take your USB cable and you plug it in inside the trapdoor, then you route the cable through this channel they give you to the back, and now you can close the lid with your cable trapped inside it. And one of the nice things about Brother is that they have all the drivers on their website for everything from Windows XP to Windows 11, as well as Mac and Linux. So I was able to download the drivers for Windows XP for all the functions of this, the printing, the scanning, the SD card slot. And as you can see, it's working. And the scanner part of it works just fine with the Windows Scanner and Camera Wizard. I can tell it color picture from the document feeder, letter size. I can increase it to 300 dpi and put in my document face down into the document feeder. And I can save it to a JPEG, a bitmap, a TIFF, or a PNG. So, there it goes scanning. And there's my scan. Looks pretty good. And this is a multi-page feeder, so I can put in 3 pages to scan. And it'll go ahead and scan all 3 pages. And there it saved them as 3 individual PNG files. And like I said, this is a fax machine, so I connected it to my telephone line. It's actually a Fios digital voice line. It's not a true analog copper landline, but it still works for sending and receiving faxes. So I'll send a fax to the HP Faxback service, which is 1888 HP Fax Me, or 4732963. This is where I wish I had one of these that has actual real physical buttons on it. You can actually buy a new one today that has real buttons on it instead of a touch screen. I'll send a fax to that number. Fax start. And there it goes. There it's sending the fax. And that was HP calling me back to send me a fax, and it does not automatically print out, which is good because anybody who has a fax machine at their business knows that most of the faxes you get are junk faxes, so you don't want those to print out. But you can see a preview of it on the screen here and then decide if you want to print it out. And there's the fax that HP sent me, even though I'm not using an HP. This is their fax back service. So you send them a fax and they call you back and they send you a fax to make sure your machine is working. And if you don't have or don't want to use a computer, you can still use a printer like this. Like it says on the sticker, you can print directly from mobile devices using either Wi-Fi or NFC. And if you have a real camera, you can take out its memory card, either an SD card or a memory stick, and stick it directly into the slot in the printer. Then you can print the photos directly from the memory card. You get a preview of them on the screen here. You can look through them and pick which ones to print. You can even rotate them. And it can also scan to a memory stick or SD card or even to a USB flash drive. Because next to those memory card slots is a USB port. So if you're looking for a printer, instead of buying a new one, head down to your local thrift store. And for about $20 or less, you may be able to find one like this Brother that prints, copies, scans, and faxes. It does everything you need a printer to do at far less than the cost of a brand new one. And if it's like this Brother, you can get cheap aftermarket ink cartridges that work just fine. It doesn't force you to buy OEM ink. And the print head is pretty easy to clean, so it shouldn't be too much trouble to get one of these things working. I just wish the paper output tray was a bit more sturdy, because it was already partially missing when I got it, and now I managed to break the rest of it.